Sophia stood at the charity gala in a dazzling crimson gown, giving a heartfelt speech about resilience and losing the love of her life. The crowd clapped, cameras flashed. But none of them knew the truth. John wasn't dead. He was watching her from the balcony above, alive, hidden, and finally free. 3 years ago, she ruined his life with one sentence during an investor meeting. John wasn't stable enough to lead. That sentence didn't just undercut his authority, it shattered everything. The deal fell through, shareholders pulled out, the media latched onto it like blood in the water. Sophia cried during interviews, claimed she had tried to save him, but behind the scenes, she took over the company and ousted John quietly. Days later, John vanished. The headlines came quickly. Tech visionary lost at sea. Tragic explosion claims startup CEO. The yacht went up in flames during a midnight excursion off the Amalfi coast. No body was recovered, just fragments of wreckage. Sophia stood tearfully at the shoreline for photos the next day. He was brilliant, she whispered. He didn't deserve this. But John had orchestrated it all. The boat was never supposed to carry him. It was a decoy, rigged with staged evidence, pre-arranged records, and his old watch planted near the wreck. He left the country that same night. New passport, new name, new silence. For a long time, John didn't watch the world, he watched her. He watched Sophia mourn him online with flowery captions and vintage black dresses. He watched her ride the wave of his death, cashing in on tragedy while painting herself the grieving genius. He watched her charm investors with tears one day and flirtation the next. But now she stood at the height of her success, adored and untouchable, and tonight marked exactly 3 years since she called him unstable. The world still pitied her, they saw her as the woe man who lost her partner too soon. But John hadn't been her partner in the end, he'd been her stepping stone. She built an empire from his ashes. But the thing about ashes, they can be scattered or they can settle, and John had settled into something colder, stronger, smarter. He didn't come back for applause, he didn't come back to haunt. He came back because he had finally healed, and healing meant closure. Closure meant facing the one who buried him before he was dead. Sophia gave one final wave to the crowd and stepped down from the stage. Her smile was dazzling. The diamond necklace around her neck? A gift John had given her 4 years ago. She wore it like it meant nothing. John took a sip of his drink, leaned back against the railing above, and smiled. He had no plans to confront her tonight, that would be too easy. Instead, he'd wait, watch, let the cracks show. Because when someone believes they've buried you, the last thing they expect is to see you standing. John had always been the kind of man who believed in slow building things, companies, trust, love. At 30, he was supposed to be a tech legend by now. Instead, he lived on the edge of a quiet coastal town, under a name no one recognized, in a small villa overlooking the sea. The man in the mirror looked different now, thinner, tighter, less idealistic. His once soft, clean-shaven face was now angular, slightly hollow, always bearing faint stubble. His eyes had grown darker, not from fatigue, but from everything he knew now. In the old life, he wore crewnecks and spoke at conferences about emotional intelligence. In this one, he wore black button-downs, drank bitter coffee, and rarely spoke to anyone at all. He'd sold off his old identity for peace. What he'd gotten was isolation, but that was fine. Silence kept him focused, and focus was everything. He followed their lives from afar, daily media alerts, hacked company dashboards, investment memos. His mind stayed sharp, not because he missed them, but because he refused to forget. Sophia was the face of it all. She was 28 now, still glowing in front of cameras, still immaculate in every outfit, every quote. She had always been sharp, but now she was polished, calculated, poised like a veteran. And to the world, she was inspirational. They adored her story, the woman who built an empire after tragedy, the grieving founder who lost her business partner, her alleged fiancé, in a tragic accident but still pushed forward. She cried on stage, gave interviews about John's vision. She even built an award in his name for innovative resilience. It was a lie. Because behind the makeup and the mourning dresses, she had gutted his legacy. In old press kits, she used to be listed as co-founder COO. Now it read, founder CEO. John's name had disappeared, one edit at a time. He wasn't mentioned in company history anymore. He was a ghost. And yet, she still wore the necklace he gave her, still visited the coast every July 17th, the day of the yacht explosion. He wondered if she did it for guilt or branding, maybe both, maybe neither. John didn't try to understand her anymore, but Deborah, she was different. Deborah had once been his strongest ally, even if she never said it aloud. 27, sharp in silence, always the one taking notes when others spoke too much. She joined the company back when it was just a cramped apartment with whiteboards and cold pizza. John had noticed her intuition early on, how she always predicted product delays before they happened, how she picked up on investor discomfort halfway through a meeting. She never demanded credit, just executed perfectly. When the company expanded, she became operations lead. While Sophia smiled for reporters, Deborah kept the entire machine running. And when John died, Deborah didn't attend the memorial. Instead, she went back to her desk the next day and worked like nothing had happened, quiet, focused, distant. She never said a word about her doubts, but John saw it, in her subtle questions to Sophia during QAs, in how she stored all old code instead of deleting it like instructed. She never deleted his email from internal systems, even though HR insisted. And every few months, she sent a strange internal request to the accounting team. Are we still tracking unverified offshore IP activity linked to JF systems? She knew, or at least, she suspected. John never reached out, but he watched her, closely. Then there was Ryan. At 32, Ryan was everything John wasn't: flashy, fast-talking, addicted to headlines and term sheets. He wore confidence like a tailored jacket, sleek, attention-grabbing, but ultimately hollow. Ryan came in after John's death, offering Sophia capital and credibility when she needed it most. He said all the right things, offered to honor John's legacy. Then, slowly, he began twisting it. Now he sat on the board. He was also Sophia's boyfriend, unofficially. The tabloid speculated, their PR team deflected, but John didn't need photos to know the truth. He could tell from the way Ryan touched her lower back during panels, from the hotel confirmations buried in leaked expense reports. John knew Ryan's type. He didn't love people, he loved leverage, and Sophia, brilliant, wounded, powerful Sophia, was the best leverage in the city. But Ryan didn't know her history the way John did. He didn't know about the 3 nights she stayed awake building the first prototype. He didn't know she used to cry when investors made her feel small. He didn't know about the way her voice shook the first time she pitched a loan. John knew those things, and now, so did Deborah. John didn't want Sophia back. He wasn't here for reconciliation, but part of him still needed to know how much of who she used to be still existed behind the empire she built. Did she miss him, or just the part of him that helped her climb? And if she ever saw him again, would she feel relief, or fear? That was the question John was almost ready to ask. Not in words, in silence, in action, in cracks. He wasn't returning to the world she ruled. He was simply waiting for her to realize it never belonged to her in the first place. The storm began on a Monday. Sophia had just stepped out of a brand shoot for her upcoming product launch when her assistant ran toward her with wide eyes and a trembling voice. "You need to see this." The assistant handed her a phone already open to a tech leak forum. There it was, PulseMind, Sophia's flagship app, the crown jewel of her empire, leaked online 4 days before its launch. Not a mock-up, not a rumor, a fully working beta. Sophia's smile vanished, her heels clicked rapidly down the corridor as she barked orders into her phone. "Where is legal? Get cybersecurity on the line, have PR prep a statement in 30 minutes. Upstairs, investors were already calling. Worse, people were posting screenshots showing fragments of back-end code. The embedded tag on the framework read, JF, prototype, backup. It was quiet, buried deep, but not deep enough. Someone found it, posted it, JF John Fletcher. Sophia's fingers clenched around the phone, her knuckles went white. At that very moment, Deborah was alone in her office 2 floors above. She had returned late from lunch to find a plain brown envelope slipped under her door. No name, no address, just the word proof scrawled on a yellow sticky note. Inside was a single black USB. She plugged it in cautiously, on a private laptop she always kept disconnected from the main network. And there it was. Meline's, source files, design iterations, build notes, audio recordings of development meetings. The root folder was labeled JF Archive. Deborah froze, her hands hovered over the keyboard, unsure whether to close the files or keep going. But the moment she saw the code comments, she knew. She didn't need confirmation. She recognized the pattern instantly. John's coding style had always been as distinct as a fingerprint. It wasn't a simulation, it wasn't a trick. This was real. This was him. And if this was from him... She sat back in her chair, eyes fixed on the glowing screen, heartbeat pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She whispered, "John?" Meanwhile, down in the parking garage just before midnight, Sophia approached her Tesla after another emergency board call. She stopped cold. There, resting carefully on the hood of her matte gray car, was a white rose. No note, no tape, no markings, just the flower, fresh, full bloom, unmissable. John's signature. He used to leave one just like it at her door whenever words weren't enough. The last time she saw one was the night before the yacht trip. Her stomach flipped. Sophia snatched it up and quickly looked around the empty garage. Nothing. Silence. Her chest tightened. Back in her penthouse, she poured herself a drink, then another. She opened her archived chats with John, scrolled more, then stopped at the last one. "Sophia. You need to trust me with the pitch, don't show up tomorrow." John. Understood. He didn't reply after that. That was 3 days before the explosion. She never deleted that thread, but she hadn't looked at it in years. Now she reread it 20 times. The next morning, the media storm escalated. PulseMind leaked, source code matches deceased co-founder's work. The timing reopened old wounds and old files. John's name trended on tech Twitter. Some accused Sophia of theft, others defended her. The investor line kept ringing, but Sophia wasn't worried about the media. She was thinking about that flower. She walked into the office like fire in heels. "Deborah," she snapped, "come with me." Inside the conference room, Sophia shut the door hard. Who else has access to the prototype backup logs? Deborah kept her face unreadable. "No one outside core dev, and you wiped John's old server yourself." "Then why?" Sophia said, slowly stepping closer. "Is someone leaking builds tied to his framework?" "I don't know," Deborah said flatly. "Do you?" Sophia's eyes narrowed. "Did you keep anything?" "No." "Did you give anything to Ryan?" "No." "Are you lying to me?" Deborah met her gaze without blinking. "Are you asking because you think I'm hiding something? Or because you know he's not dead?" Sophia flinched, a microsecond, but Deborah saw it. Neither of them said anything for 5 seconds. Then Sophia whispered, "Get back to work." As Deborah left the room, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a year. That night, Ryan showed up at Sophia's apartment with wine and a cocky grin. "I smoothed over 2 VC calls and fed the media some misinformation. Crisis handled." Sophia didn't respond. She just walked to her kitchen and poured herself another drink. Ryan followed. "Are you okay?" "Do you think I'm okay?" "I think you're rattled." Sophia turned, eyes cold. "You think I am rattled because of a leak? I think you're rattled because the ghost you built your brand on might not be a ghost." Ryan was smart, but his smirk gave him away. He thought this was about PR. She didn't answer. The leak had been clean, targeted, not destructive, but destabilizing. Exactly like John used to think. He never burned bridges, he exposed cracks and let people fall through them. Sophia stepped to the window, glass in hand. She could feel him, somewhere, watching. Not with rage, not with vengeance, with purpose. And that was worse. Meanwhile, miles away in a coastal villa, John stood in front of his whiteboard, crossing off the words, "Leak Alpha Media Trigger Personal Disruption," 1 red checkmark. He turned and looked at the 3 screens showing camera feeds, Sophia's office, her garage, her balcony. He'd been patient, quiet, strategic. This wasn't revenge, it was calibration. He didn't want to destroy her. He wanted her to finally realize what she had done. Deborah now suspected, Sophia was unraveling, Ryan was clueless. And John? He was just getting started. Sophia hadn't visited that part of the city in years. The old neighborhood had changed, trendier cafes, new paint on the sidewalks, but the building still stood the same. John's apartment, 2nd floor, end of the hall. She used to have a key, she used to call it home. Now she stood outside the door, heart in her throat, staring at the dark wood like it might speak. She didn't knock, she didn't try the handle, she just stood there. In her hand was a photo, creased at the edges, of John holding their first product prototype, smiling like he'd just won the world. She pressed it gently to the door, whispered, "I never stopped checking that inbox." No one heard her. Inside the building's security camera feed, John watched from miles away, the grainy screen capturing her stillness like a painting. He turned the volume off. He didn't need to hear what she said. Her silence told him enough. Back at her office, Ryan slammed the boardroom table. "This has to stop." Sophia didn't flinch. "You've cancelled 2 speaking events. You're behind on 3 deal reviews. You're late to your own advisory call. Do you want the board to think you're unstable?" Sophia gave him a calm stare. "I am unstable." Ryan scoffed. "What happened to brand first? We agreed we're building a legacy." "You're building a fund," she corrected. "I'm trying to survive ghosts." Ryan leaned forward. "There are no ghosts. He's gone. You said so yourself." Sophia's eyes flickered. "Did I?" That night, she opened her voicemail app and clicked through draft recordings, messages she had never sent. "John, I don't know if you'll ever hear this, but today I passed your coffee place. They still make it the way you liked. I shouldn't have said what I said that day in the boardroom. I wasn't trying to ruin you." Her voice cracked in most of them. Some cut off mid-sentence, others ended with silence. She didn't delete them, she just played them again. John listened too. Deborah had unknowingly triggered a trace signal from Sophia's phone during a routine system update. Now, when she played those voicemails, they mirrored on John's dashboard in real time. He never responded. He couldn't. But each time she said his name, he sat back and closed his eyes. Deborah, meanwhile, had begun her own quiet search. She hadn't told Sophia, she hadn't told anyone. But the USB had shaken her, and the truth gnawed at her until she finally took a train to a quiet suburb 40 miles outside the city. There, in a modest 1-story home with a white fence and fading hydrangeas, lived John's parents. She hadn't seen them since the funeral. They didn't recognize her at first, but when she said his name, something changed in their eyes. "I'm sorry for the intrusion," Deborah said softly. "I just wanted to ask something that's been bothering me for a long time." John's mother ushered her inside. His father didn't speak. There were no photos of Sophia in the house, only John, young, proud, silly, laughing at birthday cakes, holding his high school trophy, leaning over his laptop. After the accident, his mother said, "We kept receiving money, every month, always the same amount, no sender, no name, just transfers." Deborah blinked. "Since when?" 6 months after the funeral, his father finally spoke, always on the 17th, John's death anniversary. Deborah asked, "Have you ever tried to trace it?" His mother smiled. "Why would we? We knew it was him." Deborah left with a knot in her throat. Back in the villa, John was reviewing the logs. Sophia had visited the old apartment again. Deborah had reached his parents. And he still didn't know what he wanted. He told himself this was about closure, truth, finality. But watching Sophia sit on the floor beside her bed, staring at her phone, not calling anyone, made something ache in him he thought he'd buried. She used to hum in the mornings while brushing her hair. She used to laugh when he misread pitch decks. She also used to lie and ruin him. He couldn't forget that. But now, watching her cry over drafts no one heard, he wondered. Inside the building's security camera feed, John watched from miles away, the grainy screen capturing her stillness like a painting. He turned the volume off. He didn't need to hear what she said. Her silence told him enough. Back at her office, Ryan slammed the boardroom table. "This has to stop." Sophia didn't flinch. "You've cancelled 2 speaking events. You're behind on 3 deal reviews. You're late to your own advisory call. Do you want the board to think you're unstable?" Sophia gave him a calm stare. "I am unstable." Ryan scoffed. "What happened to brand first? We agreed we're building a legacy." "You're building a fund," she corrected. "I'm trying to survive ghosts." Ryan leaned forward. "There are no ghosts. He's gone. You said so yourself." Sophia's eyes flickered. "Did I?" That night, she opened her voicemail app and clicked through draft recordings, messages she had never sent. John, I don't know if you'll ever hear this, but today I passed your coffee place. They still make it the way you liked. I shouldn't have said what I said that day in the boardroom. I wasn't trying to ruin you. Her voice cracked in most of them. Some cut off mid-sentence, others ended with silence. She didn't delete them, she just played them again. John listened too. Deborah had unknowingly triggered a trace signal from Sophia's phone during a routine system update. Now, when she played those voicemails, they mirrored on John's dashboard in real time. He never responded. He couldn't. But each time she said his name, he sat back and closed his eyes. Deborah, meanwhile, had begun her own quiet search. She hadn't told Sophia, she hadn't told anyone. But the USB had shaken her, and the truth gnawed at her until she finally took a train to a quiet suburb 40 miles outside the city. There, in a modest one-story home with a white fence and fading hydrangeas, lived John's parents. She hadn't seen them since the funeral. They didn't recognize her at first, but when she said his name, something changed in their eyes. "I'm sorry for the intrusion," Deborah said softly. "I just wanted to ask something that's been bothering me for a long time." John's mother ushered her inside. His father didn't speak. There were no photos of Sophia in the house, only John, young, proud, silly, laughing at birthday cakes, holding his high school trophy, leaning over his laptop. After the accident, his mother said, "We kept receiving money, every month, always the same amount, no sender, no name, just transfers." Deborah blinked. Since when? 6 months after the funeral, his father finally spoke, always on the 17th, John's death anniversary. Deborah asked, "Have you ever tried to trace it?" His mother smiled. "Why would we? We knew it was him." Deborah left with a knot in her throat. Back in the villa, John was reviewing the logs. Sophia had visited the old apartment again. Deborah had reached his parents. And he still didn't know what he wanted. He told himself this was about closure, truth, finality. But watching Sophia sit on the floor beside her bed, staring at her phone, not calling anyone, made something ache in him he thought he'd buried. She used to hum in the mornings while brushing her hair. She used to laugh when he misread pitch decks. She also used to lie and ruin him. He couldn't forget that. But now, watching her cry over drafts no one heard, he wondered, was she truly cruel, or just too weak to stop the machinery once it started? Sophia paced her apartment, unable to sleep. Her inbox was full of condolences she didn't ask for. John's name had resurfaced in the news again. They called him a genius, a tragedy, a martyr. No one remembered the meeting where she'd stabbed his credibility. No one remembered the silence afterward. Only she did. She opened her closet. Inside, pushed to the back, was the last hoodie John ever wore. She never washed it. She pressed it to her face and whispered, "Why didn't you fight me back?" John watched the security feed and whispered back, even though she couldn't hear it, "Because I loved you." Deborah returned to work and said nothing, but she sent a single message to an encrypted email she had discovered on the USB. "I know." John didn't reply, but he stared at that message for hours. Ryan, growing frustrated, began whispering to board members behind Sophia's back, suggesting fatigue, hinting at stepping in temporarily. Sophia knew she wasn't blind, but she didn't care, because the only thing she wanted was to know if John had ever truly left, and if he had, why did it still feel like he was standing right behind her? Deborah had always been careful, quiet, but curiosity was a louder force than fear. After cross-referencing the metadata on the USB and the bank activity linked to John's parents, she narrowed the source of the monthly payments to a small holding company with a rural mailing address. That address led to a coastal property deed, filed under a pseudonym, Jonathan Fields. The house sat on the edge of a windswept cliff, with white shutters and ivy along the sides. Too ordinary to be suspicious, too perfect to be unintentional. She didn't knock, she waited, watched. Then she saw him. John stepped out with a mug in hand, wearing a navy pullover and jeans, barefoot on the wood. In porch, alive. He looked older than she remembered, more angular, more distant, like he'd outgrown softness entirely. She didn't take a photo, didn't call out. She left. The next morning, John found a note under his door. "You're still you don't have to finish it with fire, let me help." D. He read it twice, then folded it into his pocket. Meanwhile, back in the city, the cracks in Sophia's foundation finally split wide open. A hidden camera clip surfaced on an investor forum. Ryan, drunk at a closed-door networking party, laughed as he mimicked John's old voice. "I think she really loved me, guys, right up until she deleted me from the company folder." Someone in the background shouted, "Too soon, man." Laughter followed. Within hours, it was everywhere. Sophia didn't wait for PR to handle it. She called a press conference herself. Standing in front of a row of reporters, she removed the ring Ryan once gave her, dropped it into the mic stand cup holder, and said clearly, "As of today, my partnership, personal and professional, with Ryan Beckett is over." She left without taking questions. Then, she disappeared. No social media, no meetings, no office appearances, not even her staff knew where she had gone. But Deborah did. She kept track of Sophia's location through the app's internal test build, the one only 3 people in the company had access to. Sophia's device still pinged occasionally, always from one of 3 places. And on the night of August 17th, the signal paused for 4 hours at a modest 1-story house in the suburbs. John's parents' home. Later, when they awoke, they found a white envelope taped to the back door. Inside, a letter addressed simply to the ones who raised him right. There was also a necklace, silver. The one Sophia wore at every public appearance about John. His mother read the letter in silence, then quietly handed it to her husband. Neither of them cried, they just sat on the porch in the sunrise, holding hands. 2 days later, Deborah received a call from John. "Meet me," he said. She arrived at the same cliffside house. This time, she knocked. He opened the door without surprise, no greetings, no small talk. He just handed her the letter. She read it, slowly. "I never apologized the way I should have, not when it mattered. I thought I had time. I used your name to build something that never felt real because you weren't there to share it. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I just want you to know, I didn't delete you from memory, only from the website." Deborah looked up. "Are you okay?" John's eyes were unreadable. "I don't know." She didn't push. Instead, she sat across from him at the small kitchen table. The same place where he'd once written 1,000 lines of code and erased 1,000 versions of himself. "I'm not here to help you burn her down," Deborah said. "I'm here to help you decide what to carry, and what to leave." John was quiet, then asked, "And if I choose nothing?" She gave him a sad smile. "That's still a choice." He unfolded the letter again, read the last line for the 4th time. "If you're still alive, I hope the world gave you peace, because I never could." The silence in the room changed after that. John leaned back, closed his eyes. For the first time, he didn't see her standing on a stage, or walking away from him in that boardroom, or crying beside a camera. He saw her in that small kitchen from years ago, curled up in his hoodie, laughing at something stupid he'd said. He exhaled. And for a moment, he didn't feel hunted or haunted. Just human again. The exhibition wasn't publicized, no press, no hashtags, just a string of anonymous invites sent to exactly 13 people. Each invitation carried no name, only a location and a title. What We Lose When We Betray. The venue was an abandoned photo gallery on the outskirts of the city, long forgotten by the tech elite who once funded it. But tonight, it glowed with soft ambient light and thick, curated silence. John arrived first. He moved quietly, dressed in black, his beard was trimmed short, his posture straighter than it had been in years. This wasn't for revenge, it was for closure, his, not hers. Deborah had helped coordinate everything. She handled the setup, the digital projections, the preloaded footage. She waited outside, ready to lock the door behind the last guest, but there would be only one, Sophia. She arrived exactly at 8:00 p.m., no entourage, no assistant, just her. Hair pinned back, black trench coat, no makeup. She stepped inside slowly. The room was silent, dimly lit by a single row of floor-level LED strips. The walls were blank, until they weren't. As she walked in, the projections came alive. One by one, giant screens lit up with moments she hadn't seen in years. The first was a video of John laughing beside her on the old office couch, empty pizza boxes around them. He was holding a marker, drawing a crude wireframe of their first pitch slide. She was teasing him. They looked young, happy, whole. The next screen showed their launch night. She was on stage. John stood behind her, clapping. His eyes looked proud. So did hers. Then came the yacht. The last known image. The two of them at sunset, holding wine glasses, silhouetted against the water. The day before the explosion. Sophia stopped walking. She turned slowly in place, surrounded by these moving ghosts. Her hand moved toward her chest, instinctively touching the place where her necklace used to be. Then everything went dark. A single screen in front of her turned on. This time, it wasn't a projection. It was a recording. John, alive. Wearing the same black shirt he wore the night before he disappeared. His eyes locked onto the camera. She gasped, her hands covered her mouth. He began speaking. No one asks what happens to a man when he's erased. They ask what happened to the company, the headlines, the product, but no one ever asks about the man. He paused. For the record, I didn't die. I left. I had to. Because the betrayal didn't happen with a knife or a scandal. It happened in a sentence. The footage cut to a blurry recording, Sophia's voice at an investor roundtable. John struggling emotionally, I think I should present the pitch. The recording paused again, John's image returned. I wasn't struggling, I was grieving my father, and instead of stepping beside me, you stepped over me. Sophia backed away, tears rising, John's voice remained calm. You took my place at the table, then took my name off the deck, then took my code and called it yours, and the world gave you applause. She whispered, stop. But I'm not here to destroy you, John continued. I'm here to say thank you, because without you, I wouldn't have learned how to rebuild. He looked directly into the lens. I faked my death not to haunt you, but to escape you. Sophia's knees buckled, she collapsed to the floor, silently sobbing. The screen went dark. Behind the curtain at the back of the gallery, John stood motionless, watching her through a slit in the fabric. She curled forward on the cold tile floor, her voice barely audible. I loved you. John heard every word. He stood there, unmoving, hands clenched at his sides, eyes filled with something far too complicated to name. He didn't step out. He just stood there. Quiet. Breathing. Alive. A month passed, the headlines cooled, the gossip died. The digital world moved on. Sophia did not. She resigned without fanfare, no statement, no farewell post, just a silent handover and a final logged-out notification. Her company issued a brief press release about strategic realignment and indefinite personal leave. The board accepted it with polite regret, then quietly celebrated the chance to reshape the narrative. And Sophia vanished. Her accounts went dark. Her apartment lease ended, her number disconnected. No one knew where she went, except John. He didn't follow, but he saw the bookstore listing, a soft launch, quiet announcement, a little shop by the sea in a town not far from where he had once disappeared. She used a new name on the sign, Rosa the Lighthouse. Inside were shelves of paperbacks, a tiny coffee stand, and a reading chair that looked out toward the water. Sophia didn't host author nights, she didn't run social ads, she just shelved books, brewed coffee, and existed. Alone. Some customers said the owner seemed kind, if a little distant. She never spoke about her past, never corrected anyone who mispronounced her name. She simply smiled and said, I'm just here to take care of stories. Far from her, in a crisp, modest building tucked between two trees in the city's arts district, John registered a new venture. The ARC Initiative. A tech fund for ethical founders, people who wanted to build slowly, consciously, without ego. His name was on the paperwork, and next to his, another name. Deborah Lynn, Chief Operating Officer. She brought structure, he brought vision. Together, they rebuilt something clean, quiet. There were no interviews, no cameras, no quotes. Just two people working, day after day, behind whiteboards and spreadsheets. They didn't talk about Sophia, not because it was forbidden, because it wasn't necessary. John sometimes sat in the office long after Deborah left, staring out the window as rain streaked down the glass. He still thought of Sophia, but not with anger, not even with longing, just stillness. There had been a time when he wanted her to feel what he felt, to lose as much as he had, but distance had taught him something deeper. She had lost, and he had let go. One evening, he received a package with no return address. Inside was a book, The Art of Solitude. The title page held no message, just a dried white rose pressed between the front flap and the first chapter. John smiled. He placed the flower in a small glass frame and hung it on the office wall. Deborah noticed but didn't ask. She simply added a second nail next to it and hung an old, faded prototype wireframe of their newest project. John glanced over. "Looks familiar." Deborah smirked. "You still draw like a nervous intern." They laughed. No past, no ghosts. Just work, quiet harmony. One step at a time. Sometimes healing doesn't come through apologies. It comes from choosing not to go back. The sun had already dipped below the cliffs when John closed the last window of the office. The soft hiss of rain against glass lingered, fading into the evening. Deborah had left hours ago. The building was silent. He stood alone, the city glowing far beyond the fogged-up glass. Inside the quiet room, only the soft hum of a desktop remained. John walked to the back wall where the glass frame hung, simple, unpolished. Inside it, the white rose had faded to a fragile ivory. Delicate veins ran across its petals like fine cracks in porcelain. Next to it hung the wireframe sketch of his latest prototype. It wasn't a monument. It wasn't a shrine. It was a memory, framed but no longer open. He stared at it and remembered the weight that had once crushed him, grief disguised as obsession, anger wrapped in silence, love fraying into disbelief. But now the ache is gone. He didn't need to ask where she was or what she thought of him. He didn't need to explain himself or reappear in her life like a ghost demanding recognition. He had already done what most people never did. He survived being erased. Some people crumble when forgotten. Others chase the ones who let them go. John had chosen neither. He built something else, a new life, a better one that didn't orbit Sophia. He picked up the framed rose, just for a moment, and traced the edge of the glass with his thumb. He thought of that last moment in the gallery, the way she had collapsed, how her voice cracked when she whispered what she never said when it mattered. "I loved you." Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. It no longer mattered. He gently placed the rose frame back and turned off the lights. Outside, the rain had stopped, the street was quiet, and in the final space of memory, where her voice once echoed loudest, he whispered into the silence, "I died the day you erased me from your life, and I lived the day I stopped needing to be in it." And then, he walked away.